Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I've got an awesome video for you today because we are going to be checking out NVIDIA's brand new RTX 4060 Ti Founders Edition. This is the 8GB model of the 4060 Ti, which will be available in shops tomorrow. There's a 16GB model coming in July, as well as the standard RTX 4060. But today we're focusing on this card and how it compares to the competition, such as the AMD Radeon RX 6750 XT, and of course this card's predecessor, the RTX 3060 Ti. So NVIDIA can't really be accused of inflating prices this time around, because the $400 price tag is the same as the 3060 Ti and actually the same as the 2060 Super as well. So prices have hovered around the $350, $400 mark for a while for these particular cards, but we're going to be seeing if the various features that you get with this card, such as DLSS and frame generation as well with DLSS 3.0, are worth it over the competition. Now, the RX 6750 XT retails for around $350 to $400, so it's maybe a little bit cheaper. The RTX 3060 Ti, though, remains stubbornly high. I couldn't really find many models below $400. So there's probably going to be some interesting pricing tweaks with graphics cards over the next few weeks as well. But today we're focusing on the performance of this card to see whether it is worth your cash. First, though, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is scdkey.com, where right now you can get great deals on software such as Windows 10, Windows 11 and Microsoft Office. And even better is I've got a 25% discount code to share with you guys. Windows 10 Professional, for example, which is fully upgradable for free to Windows 11. All you have to do is click Buy Now, enter the code CRT25 into the promotion code box, click Apply, and the US price will drop from $22.09 down to just $16.57, and in the UK, you'll see the price fall to just £12.79. Once you've paid, head over to your order page, click the Get Key button, and copy your Windows key code. When you're in Windows, you want to move your mouse over to the Start button, right-click, go to Settings, then Update and Security, and then move up to Activation, and finally click on Change Your Product Key, copy and paste your brand new product key into the box, click Next, then click Activate, and your Windows 10 installation is now activated. You can do the exact same thing with Office 2021 Professional, CRT 25, click Apply, and you will see a hefty discount. Thanks again to SCDKey for sponsoring today's video. In terms of specifications, the RTX 4060 Ti 8GB is cut down a fair amount from the much more expensive RTX 4070, which retails for $600 as opposed to $400. You get 4,352 CUDA cores compared to nearly 6,000. The Tensor core count stands at 136 compared to 184. The RT cores stand at 34 third gen, whereas the RTX 4070 has 46 third gen. And the ROPs are also lower at 48 versus 64. The memory bus is 128-bit, and again, it's bigger on the RTX 4070 at 192-bit, and you also get more memory on the RTX 4070 as well at 12GB versus 8GB on the RTX 4060 Ti. The 32MB L2 cache is slightly smaller than the 36MB L2 cache of the RTX 4070, but we're also dealing with a much more power frugal graphics card. So the RTX 4070 was already pretty power frugal at 200 watts, easily one of the most efficient cards out there in terms of performance. But what we're looking at here today is a TDP of just 160 watts. So it could be very, very attractive in terms of building a small form factor PC, or generally something where you don't need a lot of heat being dumped back into your case. So other pricing that we should be considering is that of the RTX 4060, which will land at $300. So if you can't quite stretch this far, then you might want to wait until July for the RTX 4060 to be launched. And of course, we also have the RX 6750 XT, which retails for around $350, with some models going for closer to $400. So that is another card that you will want to be considering for your new gaming rig, or if you're upgrading, of course. So that's it from the specifications and the discussion. Let's crack on with the benchmarks. First up, we should talk about my test system, which includes an Intel Core i9-12900K processor, 32GB of DDR5 memory, and all of the latest Windows updates and drivers for the graphics cards in the graphs. As this is a mid-range card, I have focused on 1080p and 1440p performance, but I have included a few tests at 4K with DLSS enabled to see the impact of that feature when you're gaming at very, very high resolutions. BAR and Smart Access Memory is enabled for AMD and NVIDIA cards, so will benefit games that support it. And for obvious reasons, I haven't included some of the higher end cards on test, such as the RTX 4090, in the 1080p results, because you'd be slightly nuts to buy that graphics card if you're going to be gaming at 1080p. First up, we have Rainbox Six Extraction, and at 1080p ultra settings, we have a pretty good result for the RTX 4060 Ti here, although the RX 6750 XT from AMD was a little bit faster. The RTX 3060 Ti, meanwhile, was significantly slower, and the RTX 4060 Ti 8GB also offered a slightly better performance than the RTX 3070. Stepping up to 1440p, and we see the RX 6750 XT still outperforming the NVIDIA card, but again, the NVIDIA card did offer a substantial increase in performance over the RTX 3060 Ti. In Flight Simulator, we've got the RTX 4060 Ti not really offering that much above the RTX 3070, 3060 Ti or RX 6750 XT, but there is a fair amount of system bottlenecking going on in this benchmark. Stepping up to 1440p, and we see slightly more variation in these results, and we have the RTX 4060 Ti 8GB, again offering a similar performance to the RX 6750 XT and RTX 3060 Ti, and you kind of really have to step up to the RTX 4070 to see noticeably higher frame rates. Moving on to Halo Infinite in the campaign mode, and at 1080p we have a really good result for the RTX 4060 Ti here, which even managed to outstrip the RX 6800 XT, but then this game does seem to be favouring NVIDIA cards in most of my tests. That said, the 4060 Ti still managed to massively outstrip the RTX 3060 Ti and RTX 3070, so it's a decent result for the 4060 Ti in this game. Dialing things up to 1440p, and the RTX 4060 Ti had an excellent minimum 99th percentile frame rate here of 111 frames per second, which even managed to outstrip the RX 7900 XT and RTX 3060 Ti. However, those cards offered much higher average frame rates. Still, it was a decent showing against the RTX 3060 Ti, which was much slower, as was the AMD Radeon RX 6750 XT. Moving on to Forza Horizon 5 then, and we have a relatively good performance here for the RTX 4060 Ti over the RTX 3060, but both the RTX 3070 and AMD RX 6750 XT were quicker than the new NVIDIA card. Something that was pretty clear from Forza Horizon 5 is that it does prefer AMD cards. However, the RTX 4060 Ti did offer a benefit over the RTX 3080 and RTX 3060 Ti here, with noticeably higher frame rates. However, again, the RX 6750 XT was significantly faster in this game. Moving on to Far Cry, and again, this is a game that generally prefers AMD graphics cards. Still, the RTX 4060 Ti did manage to better the RTX 3070 and RTX 3060 Ti, but it couldn't quite match the frame rates of the RX 6750 XT. Stepping up to 1440p, and we have the RTX 4060 Ti again offering a decent amount extra performance over its predecessor, the RTX 3060 Ti, but again not quite matching the RX 6750 XT, although it was a bit closer at this resolution. In Watch Dogs Legion, we have the RTX 4060 Ti outperforming the RX 6750 XT finally, and that's largely down to DXR or ray tracing enabled, which generally hurts AMD cards more than it hurts NVIDIA cards in this game. We also have a decent amount more performance over the RTX 3060 Ti, but again here the RTX 3070, perhaps with its wider memory bus or some other features, has a slightly higher frame rate on both the average and 99th percentile. Moving up to 1440p, and the RTX 4060 Ti offered a decent performance against the RTX 3060 Ti and RX 6750 XT, which definitely seemed to struggle at this resolution with ray tracing enabled, while the 4060 Ti also managed to nearly match the RX 6800 XT. In Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition at 1080p but with ray tracing enabled, we have a mid-table result for the RTX 4060 Ti against other slightly more affordable graphics cards in the mid-range. It managed to beat the RTX 3070, RX 6750 XT and RTX 3060 Ti quite convincingly, especially on the average frame rate, and you need to step up to an RTX 3080 or RTX 4070 to see significantly faster results. It was a similar performance at 1440p with the RX 6750 XT offering much lower frame rates at these settings, as did the RTX 3060 Ti, and the RX 6800 XT actually being outperformed by the 4060 Ti on the average frame rate here. So it's a pretty good showing here for the 4060 Ti. Moving on to our DLSS testing now then, and in Metro Exodus, obviously not supporting AMD FSR here, so there's no benefit for AMD here. What I've done is simply tested the AMD cards at 4K at these settings, but obviously they can't enable DLSS, only the NVIDIA cards can, and that's what I've done for all the NVIDIA cards in this graph. So the RTX 3060 Ti obviously offering a decent performance given that it's a low-end card. It's actually beating the RX 6950 XT here, obviously DLSS being enabled and giving it that advantage. The RTX 4060 Ti actually outpacing the likes of the RX 7900 XT, so it's a decent result here if you want to enable DLSS. Moving on to Rainbow Six Extraction at 4K, again with DLSS enabled, and we have a pretty decent result here for the RTX 4060 Ti, which outstrips the RX 6950 XT again, and also again comes close to matching the RX 7900 XT. However, it didn't really offer a huge amount extra performance over the RTX 3060 Ti. The RTX 4060 Ti is the cheapest card to offer DLSS 3.0 and frame generation, and here we can see just what a massive benefit this can bring to certain games such as a flight simulator. So if we look down the bottom of the graph, it's generally performing about the same as the RX 6750 XT, a little bit faster than the RTX 3060 Ti. But if we add DLSS 3.0 into the mix, we see significantly higher frame rates. In fact, both of them are more than doubled here, rising to 72 frames per second on the minimum 99th percentile. Now, AMD obviously has FSR, and that does give a lot of its graphics cards a boost, but even the far more expensive RX 7900 XT was only a little way ahead of the much cheaper RTX 4060 Ti. So it's a pretty good result here, and DLSS 3.0 obviously dealing with other bottlenecks in your system. So even if you've got a relatively modest CPU or not enough memory, DLSS 3.0 can potentially still offer significant benefits in frame rates. By far and away, the best result for NVIDIA here, though, is in power efficiency, because the RTX 4060 Ti, despite outstripping the RX 6750 XT and RTX 3060 Ti by quite some margins in a lot of tests, it draws a huge amount less power. In fact, it was nearly 100 watts less than the RX 6750 XT for the system as a whole, and around 60 watts less for the system as a whole for the RTX 3060 Ti. So some serious power efficiency credentials, and potentially a very cool running power frugal card for your particular system, especially if that's going to benefit you if you're using a small form factor PC or something with not a lot of airflow. Something that's always been very appealing to me in terms of recent generations of NVIDIA cards is just how efficient they've been. And this goes all the way back to the likes of the GTX 960, the GTX 1060, etc. What you had with those cards were models that were extremely power efficient. They could be made into really, really small models. And that's maybe something that we've been lacking with the higher end models with their massive coolers and fairly high power draw. Thankfully today, I think we can say that we're back to the norm, at least in terms of power efficiency, because what we have here is a card that massively undercuts the RTX 3060 Ti and Radeon RX 6750 XT in terms of power consumption. In fact, it's nearly 100 watts less than the AMD card and around 60 watts less than the 3060 Ti. And that's pretty impressive, if I may say so. So NVIDIA should at least be commended on the power efficiency that we're seeing here from the Ada Lovelace architecture, and in particular with the RTX 4060 Ti. So if you're building a mini ITX rig or something that is a little starved of airflow, or you just want to keep power and thermals to a minimum with a very cool running graphics card, this card here, the RTX 4060 Ti, is very, very appealing. Now, in terms of other results, again, the waters are kind of muddied due to DLSS and rasterization and the difference between the two and whether you're going to use DLSS at all. There are a lot of people out there that are absolutely loving it. There have been lots of reviews out there that are generally favorable of DLSS, even when compared with AMD's equivalent FSR. So what we've got here is a card that holds its own in rasterization, but the Radeon RX 6750 XT was faster or a match in quite a few situations, and that's potentially worrying for NVIDIA if this card isn't available for anywhere near its launch price of $400, because the AMD card usually or definitely can be had for a lot less than that at the moment. However, there are some situations in rasterization where the RTX 4060 Ti was a lot faster than the AMD card, and combined with the benefits that we're seeing from DLSS, especially with DLSS 3.0 and frame generation in games such as Flight Simulator, then you are overall kind of seeing a graphics card which is very, very appealing, not just because it's the cheapest 40 series card that we've seen so far. It is a decent card in its own right with excellent power efficiency. So obviously we'd always like to see these things come in a little bit cheaper. There's also the question that it's not a great upgrade from an RTX 3070, for example. You're going to have to step up to something like the RTX 4070 to get performance there, and that's maybe something that we have seen in the past, is a newer card kind of trouncing the next card up, which is technically the RTX 3070 here, so not really the 3070 Ti. So overall, I think it's a win from NVIDIA. Definitely punching well above its weight in terms of power efficiency. Power efficiency and thermals are absolutely fantastic with this card. You get the benefit of DLSS and DLSS 3.0 and frame generation as well, plus decent rasterization performance for around $400. Now, pricing is going to be key, especially because we have some competition coming from AMD with a brand new 7000 series card soon. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that card. And as you know, or probably know, it's due for launch very, very soon. So I would definitely recommend waiting to see how that card performs before jumping for your wallet and buying the RTX 4060 Ti. But again, it remains to be seen how power efficient that card will be as well, and whether it takes a chunk out of the performance and power efficiency crown of the 4060 Ti. That's it from me here today though, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Always love hearing what you guys think of these reviews, and will you be getting the RTX 4060 Ti or do you have your heart set on something else? Always love hearing what you guys are thinking in the comments. Thanks for watching today, and I will catch you soon.